Ross Ulbricht is serving a double life sentence without parole for all nonviolent charges for creating a website. Please help free this peaceful man. Go to freeross.org and sign and share the petition.
So it's little wonder that smart shoppers everywhere take time out to pause and refresh. And where else but in the fountain where they serve ice-cold Coca-Cola?
The eMilitia Podcast, Episode 41, Fuck Gun Control, the FGC-9. Enjoy, fuckers.
Welcome to another edition of the eMilitia Podcast. On today's episode, we are going to be talking about the FGC-9. We are joined by the creator, JStark, Ctrl+Pew, another 3D gun expert, and CBRN Bookboy was nice enough to join us. Let's start with you, JStark. Basically, a little bit of background on yourself is into what got you into 3D printed guns.
Yeah, I'm basically your average Joe who's interested in firearms. And it all started from an early age that I was fascinated with guns and firearms and shit like that. But unfortunately for me, I was born in this hellhole called Europe. And in Europe, there is no Second Amendment. So you're fucked, basically. Like, if you're a guy who's into guns, you're fucked, because to acquire any firearms requires extreme hoop jumping. And sometimes it's even impossible. Sometimes it's too expensive, or the government or the local municipality just says, I'm sorry, we can't give you firearms, and we won't tell you why. You know, and so since I was interested in firearms a lot, and since I'm such an enthusiast in that area, I thought to myself, man, fuck the laws, fuck the government, fuck Europe. The right to defend yourself is a natural-born human right, in my humble opinion. You gotta accept the fact that today, in society of today, cannot no longer just defend ourselves with our fists, because technology has advanced in civilization, and now to be able to defend yourself properly, you need to have a firearm, because if the firearm is what is used today for offense and self-defense at a personal level. You see what is equipped in the hands of soldiers and policemen. It's small arms, it's firearms. And I think citizens should have the same thing, because the issue is if the sole force, like if the sole power to enforce things is in the hand of the government and the police, you're a subject. You're not free. And so with all that in mind and my enthusiasm for firearms, I just thought to myself, if I can't buy any firearms legally, so how about I acquire them illegally? The issue is the things that are in place, the regulations and all the things that make life hard for you have been so drastic in these last few years in Europe and over the last few decades that to get a firearm illegally, for example, is really, really difficult. And the border controls are pretty tight when it comes to checking for firearms. Like, for example, it's funny. Drugs get through really easily. The issues with firearms is that there isn't such a high demand as with drugs. And also with firearms, they are out of metal, so it's way harder to get through. And also, police don't give a fuck, really, European police, about drugs, really. What they look out for the most is guns, because that is what endangers their sole position of power. So to get illegally a firearm through illicit way is basically impossible unless you're neck deep into the criminal underworld. Like you're selling tons of cocaine, or you're a pimp or something like that. So unless you're that deep into that crime world, you won't get any serious connections to acquire firearms illegally. And anything where it seems you could acquire some, it will just be a scam. You'll get scammed out of your money and get fucked in the ass. So what is the last resort? You know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna make my own firearms. Fuck you all. Fuck the world. I'm gonna make my own fucking firearms. If it has to come to that, I guess I'll do that. And then what really made me hopeful was that whole defense distributed thing, that whole Cody Wilson thing with the Liberator. Oh my god, you can just 3D print a firearm? That's exciting. Yeah, and then I looked at it and I saw it's just a meme, basically. Just the fucking Liberator is nothing more than a fucking publicity stunt, TBH. So I kind of dismissed that idea. Yeah, and then a few years passed, and then 3D printers became cheaper and cheaper. And then what happened? Something caught my eye. It's called the AP9, the Shot the AP9 by Durwood. Durwood is a union carpenter who, in his free time, went into the DIY firearms world, especially focused on 3D printing. And he created a firearm like through an amalgamation of an AR-15 3D printed lower that was previously made by Warfare, for example. And he tried to come up with an own design for the upper receiver, so that you're able to build a simple 9x19 millimeter semi-automatic carbine or pistol or whatever. And the issue was the Shotty AP9. I mean, it works, and it works wonderfully once you really put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in it. But even then, the issue is you need a Glock barrel for it. And in Europe, you're shit out of luck. In Europe, it's not the receiver, the lower receiver, that is regulated. It's the fucking pressure-bearing part. The parts that are most difficult to manufacture. Like, imagine that. In the US, the regulations are in such a constellation that you're easily able to build your own firearm parentheses. You just go buy the barrel and the bolt, and then you 3D print your receiver, or you fucking make it out of sheet metal, or you can cast it, or whatever. But in Europe, you're really shit out of luck. Not only do you not have the Second Amendment, but on top of that, you're getting fucked in the ass by those tough ass regulations, which are extremely hard to overcome, unless you're like a professional gunsmith or metal worker and have just a little experience here and there. And so, yeah, and then even though it seemed like pointless, like the Shotty AP9 requires a Glock barrel, a commercial barrel, and yeah, it seems kind of pointless. Like, I mean, there were the options, of course, of like a Luthi SMG and pipe shotguns and what have you. But really, to build a Luthi SMG, it's not easy. People think it's easy. Like, the thing is, if you are a machinist, if you are somebody who does that for a living, yes, it is simple in your eyes. But in the eyes of average Joe, who never held a metal file in his hand before, because especially in Europe, things like metal work in classrooms is not a thing anymore. Not a thing since the 80s or something. So,
your background though, you're very much an enthusiast, but you're behind enemy lines. You're in an area where all the gun parts that we get to just order over the internet here in the U.S. are all heavily regulated and restricted, and they just can't be had. Okay, so getting into the AP9, you said that it was that was the first 3D printed firearm that kind of caught your eye.
It was the Liberator, actually. That was the first 3D printed firearm that caught my eye. But I mean, the Shotty AP9 was the thing that caused me
the first one that showed
get
real
new excitement,
promise
basically.
Of a fully 3D printable, fully DIY design.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so and
exactly.
the current, or the iteration of the AP9 you were looking at, you said it takes a Glock barrel still. Do you recall what it used for a bolt?
Yeah. It used like 3 1/4. Wait a minute. What is that in millimeters? Yeah, 3¼ inch
Okay.
steel rods.
Okay, so
For the bolt?
they DIY'd
Yeah.
the bolt. It was a Glock barrel, and then so getting into the FGC-9, then the current version that we're dealing with. What were the deviations there?
Yeah.
Changes to the design.
Yeah. So as I said, the issue with the
Okay.
AP9 are many. Let me list them. First, you have the Glock barrel. You can't buy that in Europe. Issue number 1. Issue number 2. All the fasteners are inch pattern. They're not. You can't basically buy them in Europe, or you'd have to import them from the UK, or even worse, most of the time from the US. And all the springs are inch pattern as well. And then on top of that, the steel is 3¼ inch. It's not metric. And then what else? And yeah, those are all issues. And then on top of that, for example, the first iteration of what later became the FGC-9, like the first iteration of my modification of the Shoddy AP9 lower receiver, the magazine didn't even fit in. Like the magazine, the mag well was so badly proportioned that you actually have to file off material before magazine.
Okay, so it was very much still a work in progress. It needed a lot of refinement before it could be released for.
Yeah, I'd say the Shoddy AP9 requires a lot of what's it called, like some post-processing, and it's just very janky. And if you look at the CAD assembly, like if you're a guy who's a CAD modeler, and you look at every single component of the Shoddy AP9, you see a ton of modeling mistakes. Like the thing is, I'm a guy, I began CAD modeling because I wanted to design my own firearm, or to modify a firearm so that I can build it. And even as a novice, I looked at the Shoddy AP9 components and I saw that really it looked kind of like very rushed. Like I think what Darwood just tried to get the proof of concept out there. Like for him, it was not about a final product. For him, it was more about a statement, or more proof of concept. It's basically the Shoddy AP9 is just a proof of concept. It's not an end product that would be popular around the world, as you can see.
And theoretically speaking, like we're talking about, DIY armaments for, to combat the state. So it's not something you could take into like a.
Yeah, I mean the main issues are outside of the US, you're basically shit out of luck when it comes to the bill of materials, and of course, obviously the barrel. And then on top of that, there is basically no documentation for the Shoddy AP9, how to build it. Like the only thing that is out there is one video, and in that video you like almost get no information. Like you get a little bit of information how to weld the bolt, but that's it. So you're extremely lost in the woods, basically, if you're an average Joe and you want to build a Shoddy AP9. And then now it gets even worse. For the Shoddy AP9, you actually need a lathe. Did you know that? For the Shoddy, I repeat again, for the Shoddy AP9, you need a fucking lathe. Why do you need a fucking lathe? Because of the fucking firing pin. For the firing pin, you need a lathe. People are so fucking ignorant and retarded. Like I'm gonna go into detail on this, of course, but they look at the FGC-9 and they say that's just a Shoddy AP9 with a homemade barrel. I mean, are you fucking out of your mind? No, it isn't. Look in the CAD assembly, look into the documentation, look at every single component, and look how much has changed. Like almost not one part is interchangeable with the Shoddy AP9, between the FGC-9 and the Shoddy AP9. So like I said, the firing pin I've completely redesigned from scratch. What I did is, instead of a lathe where you like reduce the diameter near the back and for the front, what you just do is take a 3mm stainless steel rod or silver steel rod or whatever, and then you drill a little bit in on one side, and then you use a shaft collar with a set screw to make the shoulder of the firing pin, basically. And those kind of jerry-rigged modifications I implemented on top of all the things that you find in the Shoddy AP9. For example, also this charging handle I simplified. Like with the with the SHUTI API, for example, with a charging handle. The charging handle is made out of 3D printed like bulbous sphere, and then you actually have to put in a piece of steel, like a steel stock, like I don't know, 2 millimeters or 3 millimeters, but an inch. So it's not a millimeter. But anyways, you actually have to take a thread die and put the thread on the thing yourself. And you know what? It's way more difficult than you think, especially when you handle with when you use really nasty like stainless steel types, and your die is not like HSS cobalt or something, like a piece of shit HSSE, for example. Then you won't get the threads on there at all. So what I did instead, just I mean, here you see that things were not as thought out as you would want it to be for the end consumer, basically. So for the charging handle, what I just did is I took is it Sanitco or Centico AK charging handle. I looked at that, how those look. Like I wanted to have it in those proportions because it seems like they work. So I modeled like a cylindrical shape based off that. And then I put a little cavity in there in the form of a hexagon. And what you do is you take JB weld, you take a hex head screw, and then a nut for the same type of thread, and then you JB weld that into the 3D printed charging handle. So you have the thread part of the screw sticking out of the charging handle. So now you don't have to put threads on there anymore because the threads are already on the screw. And that's another thing that I implemented. I mean, there are so many things. If I went over every single thing, this would go for like 1 hour just based on the changes alone. Like you just gotta look at the tip of the iceberg is the changelog that I've got at the end of the documentation of the FGC-9, the last page. That's just the tip of the iceberg. Like you have to realize I've been working on the FGC-9, what has become the FGC-9, for on and off for 1.5 years, 2 years. And every month, every week, I changed here a little bit, changed there a little bit. I mean, I swear to God, if you build the SHUTI AP9, I mean, the version 1.2 or something, and the FGC-9, and you go through the process of building those both, and then you handle those both, you will get how big of a difference all those little changes together make.
Go ahead.
To me, I'd like to compare it to like in the automotive industry, they make concept cars.
Yeah.
And exactly. A concept car is nothing more than, it's basically a shell to show design and maybe some ideas of future, but they rarely ever run, and they're very impractical. It's just a show off of stuff, and it seems like you took that a step further, totally engineered the thing to actually work to where a basic person, even someone with very little or no skill set, teach themselves to make this.
Yeah, no skill sets. I repeat, you don't even need to know how to use a 3D printer. You don't even need to know how to use a welder. You don't even need to know how to use a metal file. Basically, everything is extremely well explained in the documentation PDF that I wrote. And everything is illustrated with a photo and with a plain text, simple English text. And if you like, for example, don't know how to weld, I try to explain that you have to put one contact on the sheet metal that it's on your table, and on top of that sheet metal you put the bolt, and you put the other contact, the plus contact is your little clampy thing where you put in the stick for the welding stick. And I explain all those tiny little things that nobody even thought of up to this point to tell people when building something. I mean, it's incredible how much shit I put in that FGC-9 package. I mean, like for example, the 3D printing guide is in there, and it explains to you what 3D printer to buy. What is even 3D printing? How does it even work? What upgrades to buy? How to assemble it? There's a YouTube link in there, for example. It tells you, it gives you tips. Like the FGC-9 package together like we can also talk about the ECM thing and about the magazine thing and about the airsoft fire control group modification. All that together gives you so much. It's basically like it's not only a crash course. It's basically a fucking college education in how to build a DIY firearm, a hybrid DIY
Gun building
3D printed
101,
metal firearm.
JStark.
I know nothing about 3D. And one of the first questions that come to mind is, what's like a total cost, and how much time does it take to?
You were cutting out a lot there, but I heard how much time and how much money.
Go closer to your microphone, please, or lower the voice activation threshold, please. So what I got from you is you're asking how much money, how much time does it take, and I'm not sure if you looked at the FGC-9 files already, but you know what? All that information is in there, basically. Really. For example, I put into the guide theoretically how many days it will take you to 3D print all parts. I put in there, theoretically, how much PLA material you need for each part. I put in there the information, what 3D printer to buy, and if you click on there, and even the text, it says like at this time of the year, or I mean at this month in 2020, this 3D printer costs $180. It tells you how much is the 3D printer, where to buy it. And then it gives you links to every single upgrade. And if you click on that, you go to Amazon, and then you see the price. And then if you go to the bill of materials, you see every single item listed. And if you just copy what I wrote there, basically, and put it into eBay or into Amazon, you will find all the items pop up. It cost. So basically, just from the documentation alone, it's apparent what you need and how much it will cost. And we're talking about, like, if let's say you've got nothing, okay? You don't even have a power drill at home. We're talking about initial tool setup of like, let's say $200 to $400. And then for each FGC-9 you build, it's between $50 to $100. A pistol caliber carbine that is reliable, that you can actually use to defend yourself, and that you actually can go on a limited offense in close quarters, costs only $100 per gun. Imagine that.
And you can make it in the confines of a one-bedroom apartment.
Yes, I mean, yes, you could. For example, the biggest kind of issue you could come up with is to say, yeah, what about welding? And the thing is, you could very well weld in your kitchen and open up a window, or do it in the bathroom. I mean, if you were extremely crazy, you could even do it in your fucking living room. Just open the window, deactivate the fire alarm sensors, and there you go. I mean, it's unrealistic to say people don't have the option to use their balcony or to go into their basement, which has a window, for example. Sometimes you've got a basement with a window. Or you just go to a friend, and the thing is, you've got to realize, a welding unit, these days, if you look it up on eBay, on Amazon, you know how big they are? They're like 2 6-packs of beer. I'm serious. They're so portable, it's unbelievable. And that you could just put in a backpack, go somewhere where you're able to have the smoke come out of your setup, and you weld your bolt you weld your bolt there, and then you come home back, and then you can do all the rest of the process. I mean, it's ridiculous when people say, "Oh yeah, welding, that's not possible, blah blah blah." Motherfucker, I live in the middle of Europe, an extremely urbanized area, and I live in a tiny fucking apartment. Now tell me I can't do that, or people can't do that who are in the same situation. So shut the fuck up, quit LARPing. I mean, it's so frustrating seeing all these people on 4chan and wherever on Twitter. I mean, these people are so fucking daft. They've never built a gun in their life before. They're just armchair quarterbacking, coaching, and I mean, it's incredible. I mean, these guys are it's so frustrating. But I guess it's people, man. There's so much mental illness out there, and so much ignorance and snobbiness and personality disorders. I guess you gotta expect that shit, you know.
People in America, they're lazy and they're used to be able. They get everything. Their idea of building a gun is ordering all the parts offline and then just screwing the stuff together. And then you look at places like India or any other like third world nation where these people make everything they need out of next to nothing.
Yep.
I watched a video in India where they built a car out of flat pieces of metal and some screwdrivers and some hammers and some files.
Yeah, you're hitting the nail on the head. With enough blood, sweat, and tears, you can do incredible things. But the issue is, most people, especially in the Western world, are not ready to bleed, sweat, and cry. They're not ready to do so. And that is why you have to make something as easy as possible so that people are willing to go over the threshold and actually do it. In this case, the FGC-9. This is the first firearm where your average Joe can go through the documentation and has enough hand-holding, enough resources to learn from, enough resources to be guided by, that they'll say, yeah, okay, I'll go through that challenge as an average Joe. And that's novel. That's not been the case yet for any firearm of that type.
No, it is. I believe, personally, the first firearm that anyone in the world can make. Every part, just about, let's say 99% of the world can order the parts and build this themselves. So they just have to want it.
Yeah, the crazy thing is this. China is the factory of the world. China delivers to almost every fucking country on this godforsaken planet. I'm serious. Look at AliExpress and all those chink websites and look at the countries they ship to. And for the FGC-9, almost all parts you can theoretically order from China. I mean, if you can't order it by a specific vendor, you can definitely custom order it.
So to that point, Jay, I don't know. Have you seen any other non-US based builds of the FGC-9?
Yeah, of course. We've got one in our beta testing group, but outside of the beta testing group, you know the reason why there aren't so many out there right now in comparison to the Americans who are showing off their builds is obvious. I mean, think about it. What's the reason? Tell me. What do you?
The feds are
why do you
everywhere,
think
man.
that is?
No, I know.
Exactly. Because because Europeans are in such a precarious situation. Most of those are lurking. They're not even vocal. Most of those guys who are oppressed and want to build a firearm, they're not even saying anything. They're just downloading the files and building it in secrecy. And they don't have the balls to come out. Like I'm putting myself out there for those guys. I'm the target. I'm putting the marker on my head. Come on, shoot here. Because I'm the guy who says, live free or die, and I live it. I live that statement. And I don't give a fuck if I have to die for what I believe in and for what I need to do in order to liberate my fellow brethren out there who are in the same predicament as me. And seriously, I don't give a fuck if I got raided or something. I don't give a fuck. I'll just go down in the hail of gunfire. I'm serious, and I'm not even LARPing. I'm serious. I mean, just look at the things that I did, that I said, and I mean, it's evident how much risk I'm putting myself under.
Oh, yeah. You definitely put a target on your head. And you're definitely a hero to anyone who believes in freedom and doing whatever it takes to get there. Not even in the fact that of what you designed and came up with, but just the way you conduct yourself.
Yeah. You know what depresses me sometimes is it doesn't matter how much what's it called? merit is in your ideology, or how strong your will is. But you know what's depressing? I'm here stuck in Europe. Meanwhile, your Billy Joe Bob can just buy any fucking firearm he wants and get like 10,000 shots of any ammunition that he wants, and just go to his range and shoot like a maniac, drink some cream soda, eat some bacon, and have some fun. And the stark reality is that, immigration laws, and I wouldn't be even able to move there. And so I'm kind of like stuck here behind enemy lines, and the only thing I can do is like try to be free here or die trying.
Americans can take this and build it and be able to share it with other people in the world of our success because of what you have and because of the freedoms we have over here. I hope others realize what this means and the responsibility on us. If you truly believe in freedom for all, well, this is the gun that's going to bring it. I always like to think, because I started seeing it right around the Hong Kong, when Hong Kong was getting big and what was going on over there. And all I could think about, what if it was 2 years later? Those students wouldn't be shooting bow and arrows. They all could have been printing FGC-9s and actually be able to fight back and have a real chance. And I truly believe, if you believe in freedom for all and that everyone has a right to protect themselves against burglars or government, then if you have the ability to build these in your garage in America and just go shoot them in your backyard or take them to any range, you need to be on top of this and working to help everyone else in the world.
I kind of feel like, regardless of how you feel about 3D printed guns and the whole, they might blow up in your hand, they're just toys to mess around with, you should build one of these just for the idea that it can be built, and you should share it with everyone you know, and then convince them to build one too, and spread it around, spread the message.
And just even like from a technical standpoint, from like a hobby standpoint, it's extremely rewarding to build your own firearm, like to that degree of making it from scratch, basically, and extremely rewarding. You feel extremely proud, and it's actually like useful and actually reliable, and actually could save your fucking life and the people that you love. Like, think about that for a moment. Like, in what kind of a situation do you have like a hobby where you put in hours and hours, and then at the end you have actually something that is useful in your life, like can actually save your life? I mean,
for sure, that's
pretty unique. I think,
and not taking anything away from the FGC-9. Is there any, let's say, how far off are we from having a metal or a more opposed to a hardened plastic version of it, just for like longevity's sake of using a 3D printed gun?
So I can tell you this: 3D printed firearms are not limited by their nature of being 3D printed. Most of the time, they are limited by their design. Like, you can use a 3D printed firearm that is made out of PLA and designed shittily, and it will break after one fucking shot. Let's look at the Liberator. Then you look at the fucking FGC-9, and previously before that the Shetty AP9, and that 3D printed firearm out of PLA shoots how many rounds? 3K plus, 5K plus, 10K plus. Some people don't even shoot 10,000 rounds of 9mm. So I think the camp that says the longevity is not good enough yet, they should fucking shut their fucking face and look at the round count of the Shetty AP9 previously, and how many rounds Ivan got rounds through his builds, and how many people will go through their guns. Seriously, it's more about the design than the limitation of the material or whatever, because you can always make parts thicker. You can always come up with smart things where you put metal at certain spots and so on and so forth. But to like answer your question a little bit in terms of the future, the next step from here on out will be to use ECM machining to machine a locking action. Like not only will you use ECM to rifle the barrel, which is the case, for example, for the FGC-9, if you want to go that way. Not only will you use ECM for the rifling of the barrel, but you can use ECM then to make the actual bolt and the actual just the action in itself. Like, for example, imagine with a bolt action rifle, all the metal parts that have to do with getting the cartridge to stay inside the chamber and to rack a cartridge out and so on and so forth. And then eventually one day you'd be able to ECM machine the barrel extension or in general like the area around the chamber and the actual bolt, so that you can make a semi-automatic intermediate rifle cartridge rifle. Like imagine like an AR-10 kind of bolt design, or an AR-180 or whatever it is, where you have a bolt which has a triangular bolt face, and then you use ECM to make that bolt. So that's the future. Like ECM is the future. Like I don't know if you're very familiar with it, but basically ECM is basically you take water, you take salt, you take electricity, and then you take a 3D printed mandrel on which you solder copper wire onto, and then you put that into your workpiece, and you have a water pump letting the water with the salt flow through the workpiece, and at the same time the electricity will basically zap away the metal at the areas where the copper wire is exposed on the 3D printed mandrel or the 3D printed jig. And that is the way you ECM rifle, and that is the way
the technology, the design, and the materials are already there.
Actions,
it's now just a matter of making it a popular idea and getting the people to actually go out and do it.
Yeah, basically, now it's not so much research anymore. Now it's more like development in terms of when it comes to ECM, in my humble opinion. But for example, with ammo, we're more in the research department at the moment. But we actually have like a stopgap solution that's gonna be really, really crazy. It's gonna take off and will shut up those guys who say, yeah, cool, a 3D printed firearm, but what about ammo? What about ammo? So useless. Like, shut the fuck up. We're gonna shut your fucking mouth soon by bringing you something which enables all Europeans, I repeat again, all Europeans, to buy everything over the counter to make actual 9mm ammo, lethal ammo that you can use in a modified version of the FGC-9.
I gotta say, Stark, I love your rants. When you go off on a rant, it kills me every time, because I know you're right, and
nobody can say you're not dedicated.
Right?
The naysayers, like, do people think someone built a gun out in a field the first time? Like the first muzzle loader, do they think
so.
It was built in one day? No, it took time. It took years. It took years of development to get to where we were at the Revolution. 500, 1,000 years. And so far, in a year and a half to 2 years of development, you have taken a brand new design and already made it into a gun, and people are working very hard with the ammo.
Yeah, it's incredible how much, like, it's crazy. You saw what Defense Distributed did. They basically did a bunch of publicity stunts, and then in a matter of 2 years, this little rogue group, which basically started because I was bored and put out a Discord invite link on DevCat when it was online for a short moment, in I think 2018 or 2017, I don't remember exactly. And from that moment on, this little Discord server that I got started grew, and then that was like the first little core of people that that later became deterrence dispensed. And in a matter of 2 years, what we've brought to the table and what we will bring to the table still, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, I wish this would have happened way sooner. Like, it's enraging almost that I myself had to pick up all those skills and go through that effort to liberate myself. Like, there was nobody to liberate me. I had to do it myself, and it's so frustrating that nobody else did it. That a fucking Euro cuck in the middle of enemy behind enemy lines has to do that shit inside
I almost
of
feel
a
like
little
that's the
fucking
correct way
tiny
to do it,
apartment.
though. Because, like,
I mean, imagine
my
that.
whole thing with freedom and the idea that you should be able to defend your life, it's a very sort of self-initializing. Like, you have to decide on your own that, okay, my life is worth more than the government, the state, that criminal, whatever, and then you have to take the means to do it yourself. I almost feel like you've done it properly, and the rest of us are just dicking around a little bit.
And to me, it always felt like, and still feels like, dicking around. When I see people, oh, I printed that AR-15 LoRa receiver, how cool. Like, motherfucker, I wish it was that easy for me. I wish I could just order a fucking AR-15 barrel and bolt and go at it and have an AR-15 just by 3D printing a fucking LoRa receiver. I wish it was that easy. But it isn't. And yeah.
That comes down to necessity is the mother of invention. Here in the United States, you can buy cars and they give you guns.
Yeah.
Like, so no one was going to take the time and effort to design something like you.
Yeah.
And then share that information. There's so many people, if they were to come up with that themselves, would keep it to themselves.
Yeah, I guess you could say what happened is a bunch of circumstances are at play here. Like, you've got a Venn diagram, and all those circles or all those shapes overlapped in such a way that the deterrence dispensed happened and the FGC-9 happened. For example, look at the Shutty AP9. The issue is it uses a Glock barrel. It's basically proof of concept. Darrow didn't even bother with that kind of a detailed documentation as I did, and he also isn't into that getting things as public as possible, putting up propaganda trailers on Twitter and like making it being as loud as possible about it. I mean, and then the fact that I'm European, that I know what the European needs are. That we can only buy certain fasteners or certain materials, you know, and all those things came together and made all this happen. You know, it's a crazy like chain of circumstances happened. I mean, it's crazy. Like, if DevCat wasn't online for that brief moment, when I posted that Discord link, or if I didn't even bother that day to spam Discord links, deterrence dispensed would have never existed. The FGC-9 would probably have never existed. ECM rifling to that degree wouldn't be public at this moment right now. Even the 3D printed Glock magazines that Ivan designed were stemmed from the fact that when I was developing the FGC-9, I asked Ivan about an accurate Glock magazine model so that I can better design the magwell. And he actually was trying to help me and went out, bought Glock magazines, cut them in half, and modeled them. And that's how he began that path to the 3D printed Glock magazine. I mean, it's incredible that one guy starts something, and then a bunch of other guys come together, and then you've got a core of guys, and you create something that will reach the entire world. I mean, FGC-9s are built right now in Brazil right now. They're being built in Brazil, fucking Brazil, and New Zealand. I mean, can you imagine that?
Almost brings a smile.
I mean, if you've got any random questions, just ask how ridiculous they are.
Yeah. First off, obviously you have a problem getting parts in Europe. How hard was it for you to get technical information on how guns worked? Because obviously you didn't grow up owning guns, you weren't taking them apart, so you had to get some kind of technical information. Is that suppressed over there?
I mean, the thing is, there's no gun culture in Europe. So in terms of coming into contact with guns, naturally, yeah, forget that. Like basically, only areas where you get into like proper contact with firearm knowledge would be the internet, basically YouTube. Like for example, the most obvious place, for example, for you and which I used was the YouTube channel Forgotten Weapons, where Ian McCullen talks about all sorts of obscure firearms and firearm mechanisms, and that was like something that I got my like knowledge from. But I think I've got my proper like how actually guns really work, like when I actually started CAD modeling and when I actually opened up firearm assemblies, like shitty firearm assemblies from GrabCAD and from Defense Distributed, and I looked at those shitty firearm CAD assemblies, and then I like moved the parts around and I thought about, so this is how the ejector works, so this is how the extractor works, so this is how this works, and this works, and this works, and this works. So basically, unless you really go into detail, you only know superficially about firearms. Like it doesn't, like there are some people in the fucking militaries around the world who go through basic training and have got their firearm, the standard issue firearm, and at the end of the boot camp, they still don't really know what's going on there in the trigger housing. They still don't know what this connector does, because they never get explained that shit. And also, they never would bother opening up the thingies that only an extremely autistic person would do that. Like actually looking into the lower receiver, oh my god, how does the trigger move, and what is that spring for? No, most people won't do that. So I think, actually, you know what? I think Ivan probably already said this, but Ivan, I think he said that he's on the autism spectrum, and I as well. And I think a lot of this extremely technical, extremely mechanical, like gun design shit has been propelled forward by autists, because autists are not like normal people. Autists are just interested in, like, are extremely interested into the matter at hand, like technology or mechanics. Normal people don't even have time for that shit. Normal people get late, they get drunk. You know what I'm saying?
I feel like there's a lot of truth to that. Just given the number of people I interact with in the community, we're all like we're a strange group, but we're all very, very, very directed, very dedicated to the task at hand. So that's, yeah.
You've got to be, unless you're getting paid out of the ass, unless you get like paid thousands. You gotta be that dedicated and that autistic, basically, because a normal person would say, oh man, fuck off, my girlfriend is here and I gotta go to the pub with my mates and shit like that, and watch a football game or whatever. They don't like to actually to propel things like in a radical way. There almost always there's autism in play. For example, I suspect Elon Musk has autism, and many other innovators like him, and so guys, don't bully the nerds, don't bully the outcasts, leave them be so that they can develop crazy shit that you'll appreciate. That's my message to you.
Maybe that bullying was necessary in creating the I don't know. There's a nature versus nurture argument that I like to get into that.
Pro-bullying.
Right? Stuff that nerd in the closet. Okay, I'll steal your girl later. It's fine.
The ones that aren't autistic just become cops. What would you say your major hurdle with the FGC-9 was? Obviously, you had a lot of information you brought together. You did a ton of research. You didn't have to learn 3D printing. You didn't have to learn ECM. Like, you brought a ton of information together and had to look for it yourself. So what was the biggest step you had?
I mean, the biggest hurdle really in my humble opinion, is, I mean, the biggest issue that I have with DIY firearms that almost, I mean, every time, I mean, almost exclusively, the firearms don't have a rifle barrel. And when Ivan took up the work by Jeffrod and developed ECM rifling further, and he like developed kind of at the same time when I was doing my FGC-9 thing, and then Ivan was like helping a little with the magazine. So he was developing, he was modeling the magazine up, and then he always looked over his shoulder what I'm doing with the FGC-9, and then he got thinking, and then he looked at Jeffrod's ECM rifling stuff, and then he developed that further, and then he took the FGC-9 as the first use case basically, and then together we are developing like this huge like ecosystem of DIY firearm technology, and one of the biggest hurdles in DIY firearms is the barrel, is the rifle barrel and the chamber and so on, and thanks to Ivan, like one big challenge was lifted, and the other challenge of course was the magazine. Like for example with the with the Sten or the Luthi, you use either Sten magazines or like really shittily made sheet metal magazines, and to get them to work reliably is a pain in the fucking ass. And with Sten magazines, you're fucked anyway because it's a fucking Sten magazine. And so, like Ian McCullen on Forgotten Weapons says this: like, if your magazine sucks, it doesn't matter how good your firearm is; it'll just suck. It won't work. To get the magazine right is the most vital thing with any magazine-fed firearm. So one big issue was lifted by Ivan in terms of the magazine, and then the other thing was the ECM rifling. So I'd say, to the extent of how useful the FGC-9 is actually to the world, like Ivan contributed some significant part to that. That is why, of course, he's credited in the second page, the second or third page, that he provided the ECM rifling option and the 3D printed magazine thing. And yeah, it's really fortunate that I met him, that I saw him on Twitter. Like, it's crazy. The way he got into that whole thing is when I got that Discord server going, I went into like a recruiting hunt, because at first people didn't take me seriously. What, Discord server with DIY firearm as a topic? You fucking nerd, get a fucking life. Like, they ridiculed me. Like, even those guys on the DevCat pages, like in the comments, like, what the fuck are you spamming those Discord links for? Like, people didn't even take me serious, man. And then I went on like a recruiting hunt to find like-minded people, and then I was extremely fortunate to find Ivan on Twitter. And then I DM'd him on Twitter and got him on board. And I mean, it's crazy, man. Life is so crazy. If I didn't see him in that time, or if he wasn't on Twitter in that time, or if let's say he hadn't responded to me on Twitter, I mean, the DIY rifling, the ECM rifling thing, or the 3D printed magazine thing would never have happened in this way. Maybe, yeah. And I think we all should be extremely lucky that the things have happened the way they had, and that you have two highly autistic individuals here who are extremely dedicated.
Yeah. I think people, even if they don't know exactly your story and that you're the one doing it, I think they just appreciate knowledge and it being out there now.
Yeah, I mean, the most rewarding thing is to actually see the finished firearm in the hands of the people, to truly leave a legacy behind, but more importantly, to give the means to people to liberate themselves.
Some listener questions. I want to start off by saying some of the questions people had. You can listen to our first podcast with Ctrl+Pew. He explained a lot of them, so that gets rid of a bunch of them. Some other ones, join Keybase. Get on. All these questions are answered there. Like, you're not the only person asking these, and JStark is very active. He is always on there trying to help people, reminding them that the questions have been answered, and then pointing you to where you can find these answers. But
yeah.
What was that?
Go ahead.
What would you say the biggest mistakes people who are new to 3D printing make when they're making them?
Okay, I think one of the biggest mistakes is getting the wrong printer, basically, or getting a printer that will make your life hard. For example, getting a printer with an exorbitantly huge print bed will make your life harder because it's more difficult to level the print bed. Depending on what kind of springs I used, it will go out of leveling faster. It will be a bitch to level because you have to do it more often. And also assembling the printer the wrong way, or not actually following the good tutorials, the video tutorials on YouTube. For example, there was a guy recently on Keybase who did such a fucking horrible job to assemble his printer. I thought he was trolling. Like, I thought this guy was like joking. Like, seriously, like if you looked at the picture or whatever he posted, I mean, you know how you look at like IKEA furniture, or let's say just something in general that you assemble, and everything is the wrong way and it looks ridiculous. You know, for example, that picture. Do you know that picture with the Heckler and Koch USP, where in the magazine the cartridges are inserted in the wrong way? Like, it's obvious to you, and you shake your head, and this kind of shit he pulled off. So people, sometimes it seems like people don't have common sense. Like sometimes I like to think that people, like, I don't want to sound like obnoxious or on a high horse, but I always assume people were at least as educated and as like rational as me. But the more I interact with all these people, like the more I realize, like, these are normal people and I'm the autistic one. Like, I'm not the normal one. I've got to understand that these people have real lives and that they aren't as deep into the stuff, and then sometimes they don't have as much technical common sense. So it's really a struggle to not like freak out or to not get frustrated by all these like, to me they seem like almost stupid. Like, no, they actually seem very sheer stupid, but from their point of view, they just simply don't know better, you know. And it's a very difficult thing to manage a community with over 8,000 people, and to take care of them all. And but you gotta have an iron fist, because if you go into the dirt with people who just spam the chat full of their stupid questions, those guys who are kind of like on their right senses, they won't have time to get their questions in so that you can answer them. Sometimes people think I'm moderating too harshly, or I'm doing things too harshly on it, is too strict way. But you've got to understand, like in the military, for example, when people's lives is on the line, do you tolerate like a guy like running around while you're getting shot at and you actually should take cover? No, you can't. Especially when you've got thousands of people under your command, and things can get wrong really quickly, or you have got a limited amount of time and you got to babysit all of them. And that's why you got to keep things strict and as streamlined as possible. That's why, for example, I recently set up that FAQ to make sure that with these 8,000 people and more that are coming, who are keep asking the same questions, that they don't fill up chat with stuff that has already been answered 1,000 times, instead of letting the people who've been there for a while to further develop their ideas or something.
Are there any plans in the works or in the future to mass produce and distribute 3D printed firearms?
Look, 3D printed firearms have a very special niche. You've got to understand manufacturing. In manufacturing, you've got prototype making, and you've got the actual serial production. And then you've got, and you've got one-offs. The thing is, with a prototype and with a one-off, you're focusing on doing it just 1 or 2 or 3 times. You're not focusing on producing it in a serial production. For example, in the manufacturing world, for example, in China, if there is like a little toy out of plastic, will they 3D print all of them when they wanted to produce them in high numbers? No, they won't. what they will do is they will pay someone to mill a form, a mold, like it's out of steel, and then into that mold, into that thing, that steel box that is like split in half and has like a negative profile inside of it, like hot plastic filament is just squeezed in, and in a matter of like a second, literally, you produced a plastic part with complex shapes without printing it, where you've got layer for layer for layer, and it takes a long time to print a plastic object. And in a similar vein, a 3D printed firearm, like the of FGC-9 or whatever 3D printed firearm, to make it in a serial production is not that smart, because it's going to take a long time and it's very inefficient. So I'd say if you reach a point, like let's say you've got like 10 or 20 people together, like you've got some machinists, you've got some engineers and designers, at that point it would make much more sense to actually buy a milling machine, a lathe, even a CNC machine, and then produce the parts. Or for example, rely on sheet metal bending instead of 3D printing. I'd say if you're like under 5 people and you don't have access to a lathe and a mill, then like producing a bigger amount or a significant amount of 3D printed firearms makes sense. But the second you've got like more access to financial resources to actually buy a lathe or a mill, at that point you actually should to produce a firearm in a more traditional way.
Now I'll say there are a couple of people who are discussing and looking at getting an FFL to be able to pass some of these things out to people in the media, people in the press, to be able to do things like go to SHOT Show and put stuff on display, just to spread the message a little further in a little more common channel in the American gun industry. And if someone with an FFL wanted to take one of our designs and modify it so that it could be manufactured, I doubt anyone would have a problem with that. But as far as in the group for mass production, there's, I think, too many other variables that are not going to be able to be accounted for. So I don't think 3D printing is going to be the way for that.
I'd like to interject here. They had a brand new tool. I opened up the box for the brand new tool, and one of the parts for the brand new tool was encased in a 3D printed holder. Now, it wasn't pretty. They laid down I didn't get to take it home, but it was at least millimeter thick lines in the thing.
Yeah.
So obviously these people are mass producing stuff with 3D printers. There is a chance that you will see, it's never going to be, like you said, being able to injection mold. It'll never be that fast. But as technology increases, you will be able to make these parts faster.
That's true. I mean, if you look at SLA printing, and if you look at like the future, I was talking about today. Like I was talking about the present when I talked about injection molding and milling and stuff like that. But in the future, of course, 3D printing will become extremely fast, and at that point, it will be you could produce as much as you want, basically. Like there is no laws of physics that would disallow you to quickly assemble plastic molecules in a fast manner. I mean, it's not teleporting or something. It's just a matter of engineering and design. We'll get there eventually. It's absolutely clear. I think even with metal, we'll get there eventually. But it's just a matter of waiting years and years and years and years. But we'll be there.
I'm in the military, in case they didn't know. And something that we hear, and I think I talked to Ctrl+Pew about it a little bit, was DoD plan to produce and distribute these 3D printers that they can deploy to soldiers in combat or wherever they may be, and they'll be able to out rapid succession, whatever they need.
Yeah.
And I just think that technology and the development sounds like it's there. It's just a matter of now perfecting it and getting it available to people.
Well, I don't know. I don't I know we talked about this. I don't recall how old you are, or how long you were in. Do you remember any of the Future Soldier stuff they were talking about, like bionic exoskeletons? And this was like early 2000 stuff. Heads-up displays, helmet-mounted heads-up displays, and automatic targeting or built-in targeting systems, and IFF stuff. And not much of that has made it to the battlefield. So I don't know. I don't really know where they are with the 3D printable, 3D printers handed out to units to produce whatever they need. And I mean, you get into that material choice plays a big factor in equipment. So I don't know. It'd certainly be interesting. I hope to see it pulled off. I don't know where they are in that space to be able to really deliver that, though. Right?
The future of 3D printing and people accepting it and using it, I personally think, like, I work in the construction industry, and there are certain parts, like, it'll be a big part. You don't use them that often, so supply houses don't have them in stock. They're already made out of plastic. It might take you a couple weeks to get one, where if your shop has a 3D printer, they can make one in a day or two. All they have to do is download the files. They might have to send a couple bucks to the manufacturer who designed the part to say, hey, let me get your files from you. I want this. And you'll be able to get that part faster than a slow ship from China. Also, like, the home use. My mom likes to bake. You know what? All of a sudden it's Easter. Hey, I don't have a cookie cutter that looks like a bunny. I'm going to print it up real quick. So I really think, and like with the whole COVID thing, you had those guys in Italy who made those valves overnight where they cost like $1,100 and they didn't have any in stock. So they had one guy reverse engineer it from a valve that was there. In a day or two, they had new valves. So I think as far as just 3D printing in general, it's going to become very, very popular. And I think it's almost going to be like a microwave.
Yeah, I think at that point where things are that automated, you can simply like touch a touch screen and select an icon of something that you want to print, and you just push that button and let the printer do the rest. I think at that point, 3D printers will be a common household item. And I think especially when you've got like 3D printers that can 3D print food, for example. Like if you look at Star Trek, which always had like technologies that seemed impossible at the time, but then turned out real. I think like those replicator kind of things, machines will happen eventually, because when you look at the physics standpoint, there is nothing that like restricts like molecules from being assembled in a fast manner. It's just a matter of and like I said, engineering and design, and it will happen eventually, and there's no doubt about that.
I got no other questions. I also have very, very little knowledge on it, but I'll definitely have to download and check out that PDF. 3D printing is something I've been wanting to get into. I just haven't. Reloading has been my priority right now. So, that'll definitely be something I look into in the future.
Does metallized filament have any beneficial mechanical properties to 3D printed guns? Or is it just a show?
Repeat that again?
Metallized filament?
Yeah.
Is it physically stronger in any way, or is it right now? Is it just
if you talk about like metal, like where you've got a little bit of metal inside of the PLA filament or whatever filament, and you can use it with a regular printer that you would use for PLA, for example. Now that's just a complete meme. Like the only thing that is kind of real are those dedicated printers where you use metal powder. But the issue with those are so large, it's basically impractical to use it for our types of applications. So at this moment in time, anything that has to do with 3D metal printing is either too expensive, too large, too complicated, or just not good enough if you're talking about like a smaller scale metal 3D printer. Sadly, we're not there yet. So that is why I reiterate that the technology to look out for, to actually look into and participate in the development of new innovations inside that area is ECM machining. Because I think something like a desktop dedicated ECM machining, like a mill or just a set of jigs that you can use to make like a locking action, that's the next step here. That's what we should be talking about.
Cool. Like before the FGC-9, I had never even heard of ECM machining, other than Mythbusters did something about breaking out of a Mexican prison by using an old AM/FM radio and salsa. So the whole idea of ECM machining is amazing, and it's actually pretty simple. I mean, the theory and the technology behind it's pretty big, but you have made it so, or Ivan has made it so, like, you can do it at home. It's real easy. Now, is the FGC-9 capable of handling more powerful rounds? And
yes.
Yes?
I mean, are we talking about +P, +P+, or are we talking about, like, more potent pistol calibers or rifle calibers?
More potent pistol calibers.
The thing is, the current geometry of the FGC-9 barrel, as I've got it right now, I think would by using if you would use with the same geometry, if you use a rifle barrel blank like you ordered from Brownells, you turn it down to 16mm, put the shaft colors around it and put it into the gun, or you ECM rifle your barrel and do the same with 40 CR steel, which we specified, which is a hardened steel that you ordered from China. In those two cases, you should be able to shoot +P+ 9mm in your firearm without any issues. Now the pressure, wait a minute, what is it, 42,000 PSI or something? Let's say 40,000 PSI or something. Please don't quote me on that. But what I'm saying is, if you go above +P+, then you go into extremely dangerous territory. And let's say, I think 10mm higher pressure, or like 40 Smith & Wesson. I don't know what their pressure values are, but if you want to use anything that is over +P+ in terms of pressure, and you still want to retain the same outer diameter of the barrel and the same shaft colors, then that won't work. So you gotta stay at +P+ 9mm pressure or below. But the thing is, I've included the CAD assembly of the FGC-9. If you wanted to like play around with design and change parts out, you could easily put in the biggest, beefiest barrel assembly in there that you want to come up with, and then you can, I don't know, shoot 50 BMG if you want to. I mean, the action won't work, but the barrel will contain the blast. Or what? Actually, that's a stupid idea. Don't do that. But what I'm just saying is you can modify anything that you like. It just depends on how far you are willing to go to change the design, and then you can make it work. And then go do some research and do some development. But at the moment, like I said, the FGC-9 is kind of like rated for +P+ pressures.
I guess for my final question, just me personally, as someone new to 3D printing, have a little problem with, because it's rarely talked about. Is there a guide as far as the settings on slicers?
Oh yeah. The thing is, inside of the FGC-9 documentation PDF, there is a dedicated page for the slicer settings, which slicer settings are recommended for each part. Like, it tells you what the layer height should be. It tells you what kind of infill percentage it should have. It should have what kind of overhang angle setting for the supports, and so on and so forth. Basically, it gives you everything that you need. Like, you take your slicer program, it has certain default values, and then the values that I put into that page, you change those values, and that should be enough to make things work. So so no worries about slicer settings. And like I said, in the FGC-9 files, there's a 3D printing guide. It explains everything, or rather, it points to videos where everything is explained. And then inside of the 3D printing guide file, it is inside of the FGC-9 file, you've got a certain special version of Cura included, so the slice is already in there, and a certain modification which makes it work better for Creality printers. And so everything that you really need is in there, because you've got to imagine, you're an average Joe, you want to build a farm, you don't have access to farm. I was in the same situation. So what did I do throughout this whole FGC-9 development? I always put myself into those shoes. What would I like to see in a 3D printed, in a DIY design? What would I like to have? What would I want to be given by the developer? Everything that I put into the FGC-9 files is exactly what I would expect. And from this moment on onwards, if a DIY gun firearms designer doesn't do documentation as detailed as this, and as dedicated as this, and as comprehensive as this, he is not doing the community justice. Because you have to understand, to actually reach the global audience, to actually reach average Joe, you've got to make it as easy as possible, because it's just the level of threshold will be too high if you don't explain things as well as possible. And I've shown you what you can do, and you just need to follow the precedent that I set here, and just copy the things and then go on from that. And I hope other designers will follow what I delivered, and hope the FGC-9 and its documentation will be a benchmark for future.
Yeah, you certainly
releases.
set the bar pretty high for us.
And I'd like to say, like, on Keybase, I see a lot of people trying to change your design before they've ever built your design. You know what? The amount of time and effort you've put into this, guys, just build his design. Then you'll know more. You don't have to ask as many questions. You'll have already used it. Then you can make your modifications. Then you can say, hey, you know what? I didn't like this about it. Don't be trying to change stuff before you've even used it the way it's supposed to be used in the first place.
What I just wanted to say is there are just many LARPers out there who are not willing to go to the step of actually building something. They just want to post their little concept images and model something and then post it out there. And yeah, they want it easy, and they're just basically LARPing.
I want to say these guys who are doing the modifications, I mean, we enjoy that, I guess maybe enjoy is not the right word, but we encourage that sort of enthusiasm, but we want them to they have to prove that their iteration works better than the original iteration. And otherwise, it's not an improvement, and it's not going to make it into any release. So, an example of someone who did this properly, the MP5 inspired charging handle iteration on the FGC-9. That person built the original. He rebuilt the forend, and then he demonstrated to the group that, hey, this is a better idea. This is a good iteration. It makes it a little easier to build. It makes it a little more refined, and everybody wants to do the HK slap. So,
well explained. That's exactly what I mean. Like, not only just put out a proof of concept out there or whatever. Like, unless you've tested it, unless you've shown it to us, it's basically pointless. There's not even worth arguing or debating about it. I mean, just if you came up with something, print it, test it, showcase it, and then we can talk about it, how your modification makes sense or it's better or whatever. Like, put your money where your mouth is, and too many people don't do that, and I'll just keep LARPing and becoming a nuisance.
And on that point, like, here's something. So I get asked on the daily, just by virtue of Instagram, hey dude, can you make this? What do you think about this? Is this a good idea? My only response is ever, I really have no idea, because I don't know the ins and outs of your design. I don't have any idea about it, and it's not my passion to execute it, right? If you want this thing to be in the world, right, and it's your passion and you're passionate about it and you want to do it, develop the skills, build the thing, and then show me what it does.
All right, this would be the point where we do plugs. JStark, we'll start with you.
Okay, so you guys can find us on Keybase, and just go onto Keybase and look for the team DET_DISP. I repeat, DET_DISP. That's our team. So what you do is you go Google Keybase, go onto the website of Keybase, download the client either for your mobile phone or for your PC, and then install Keybase and look out for that DISP team, and then join us there, and then you can find us there. And you can also just take a look at our profiles. For example, if you Google JStark 1809, you can find my Keybase profile. And for example, if you want to donate or something, contribute to the cause, you can find donation links and so on and so forth. And also, you can find my email in the FGC-9 documentation to contact me about something that is on your heart. I mean, something that you want to ask about. Yeah, on Twitter, we've got lots of guys who are retweeting our stuff out, tweeting our stuff out, doing our deed there. But the issue is Twitter keeps banning them, so it's pointless to point you to any Twitter accounts. So basically, we are on Keybase, and just Google the Terrence Dispense, Google JStark 1809, Google Ivan the Troll, Google Ctrl+Pew, and then you'll find our stuff.
Yeah, that's a pretty good. Just Google. We're not trying to hide. We're remarkably easy to find for those inclined to take a look. For my end, I'm at Ctrl+Pew just about everywhere. I run the website Ctrl+Pew.com. We have a lot of resources to get started, as well as links to other sites where all of the goodies are that we're not allowed to talk about on the internet. I also have the guide at theguide.Ctrl+Pew.com if you're interested in getting into the space, getting a 3D printer, and taking your first steps. And once you've done that, you basically accumulated enough knowledge to begin, really printing well and repeatable parts for more freedom.
And I'm Seaburn Boogboy. You can find me on Instagram. I know very little and can offer really no knowledge about 3D printing. So I'm not really on brand with with everybody else here. But if you need anything in regards to active mass or tactics, I'm starting to divulge my knowledge. To give it, go ahead and check my page out. And thanks for having me on.
I'd like to thank the three of you
Our
for
pleasure.
your service. And thanks for coming on.
It was a pleasure.
Join us again on another edition of the eMilitia podcast. Have a good night.